Hello, my name is Brian Harrison and I am a Cloud Solution Architect with Microsoft. I wanted to continue the 101 series of videos that I've been putting together by talking about one of the, in my opinion, most important topics for all customers to really get started within Azure, and that's governance. Now, typically governance covers one of three major, actually it covers all three major areas: resource management or organization, security, and auditing. And the area that we're going to focus on in this video is the resource management area. Now, within Azure, the primary tool that you're going to use to organize your resources within a given Azure subscription are resource groups and tags. Now, resource groups, you can see here on my portal, I have a blade here listing all of my existing resource groups. Resource groups are going to be your initial scope point that you will use to define your security, who can do what within the scope of either your resource groups or your individual resources, or even at the entire subscription level. But resource groups are going to normally be your initial entry point for providing your security. It'll also be a great way of organizing your resources in a way that makes sense to you based on your business needs. Now, at the end of the day, a resource group is nothing more than a logical container. You can think of it as a dotted line box that a number of different resources will exist within. Now, when I say it's a logical container, it's a dotted line box, it means that you can place anything you want within the scope of this particular resource group. And as you can see here, I have an app service plan as well as a storage account. They are not the same resource types, but to me, they are related in some way. One of the most common ways for customers to provide cost controls within their Azure subscriptions is to leverage resource groups, and then if they need to go to another level of depth, they will use tags. Every single resource inside of Azure, no matter what kind of resource, compute, networking, storage, data, AI, applications, everything has to be placed inside of a resource group. And every one of these resources has the ability to have tags assigned to it, as you can see with my cursor right here. When creating new resources inside of Azure, you do not have the ability to assign tags at that time if you are creating those resources through the portal. You do have the ability to do that when creating them via scripting or the SDKs, the REST API. Let me first show you that by starting off by just creating a new resource group, just so that you can see how easy it is. So we're going to start by just clicking Add, and we're just going to call this the testing group, and that's all that I need to do. Now, it does specify a location. The one thing that I want you to be aware of is, once again, this is a dotted line box. It does not mean that the resources have to exist in this location that I'm creating it. It is just that that is the location where all metadata related to the resource group itself is kept. So when you apply permissions at the resource group scope level, that metadata will be stored in Central US. When you apply policies, which we'll talk about in another video, that is going to be tied to the resource group scope, that metadata will be stored in Central US. That then tells the Azure framework when it needs to do a security check, a policy check, it knows where to gather that data. The resource group, though, at the end of the day, can span across all regions as far as where resources can be deployed, and of all resource types. The only limitation is that only resources within the subscription that you have logged into, that the resource group is a part of, can contain those resources from within that subscription. So if I create this, I now have a box and I can start putting resources within it, and any security, any policies that I create for that particular resource group will be applied to the resources within. Now, I talked about tags. and mention, as you can see here, I cannot add tags. If I go to another resource type, let's say a storage account, I'll create a new storage account. And as you can see here in my wizard, it asks for the name, account kind. These are all pieces that are part of storage, but there is no place for me to enter in any tags. I do, on the other hand, though, do get the ability to specify existing resource groups, or I can create a new one on the fly, thereby showing you that this is a required element of storage accounts. And I can tell you that this is going to be a required element for all resources within Azure. Now, as I mentioned, tags. Tags are going to be another way that you're going to be able to filter, whether it is a search or your cost billing sheets, you being able to pull out data and filter that data in such a way to provide cost controls. So if I take one of my existing storage accounts that I have here, and I go to the tags area, the tags are nothing more than a name value pair that then get assigned to this individual resource. Tags cannot be inherited from the resource group. That is one thing to keep in mind. If you do apply tags at the resource group resource, then it is only applied to that resource group. Those do not flow downward. At the end of the day, though, we are talking about name value pairs. Every resource can support up to 15 tags, with the name being no more than 512 characters and the value being no more than 256. So if I just do something like the following, type equal to storage, and then click save, I now have a new tag that is being added, type equal to storage. So I can now use this tag in the search box up here. I could also do storage. Now, storage is somewhat generic, but it does provide me with the ability to do a search. I also have the ability to use this within the scope of my scripting, whether that is CLI or PowerShell. There are commands that you can use to actually do a search for all resources that correspond to this value. In addition, I mentioned cost controls, billing sheets. Tags are listed in a separate column of the billing report that all customers receive every month, thereby allowing you to very easily filter and find costs for all items that have a given tag. To give you an example, one of my customers that I'm working with right now is using this exact mechanism to apply a cost center number to every resource within Azure, thereby allowing them to do chargeback to those cost centers for individual resources that have been deployed inside of Azure. Even if those resources are tied to multiple applications, multiple systems in multiple regions and multiple subscriptions, because they're using a tagging convention, they are able to find all of that information. In addition to the limits that I mentioned pertaining to the number of tags or the characters for each tag name and tag value, no resource can have more than 15 tags. They do not receive inheritance, as I mentioned, and there are certain characters that cannot be applied to a tag value or a tag name. What I will do is I will put a link where the video is hosted, providing you with the documentation showing all of the limitations for tags. Now, I realize that this is not a very lengthy video. It is not a very in-depth video, but this is a topic that is extremely important. Every customer needs to understand that the different levels of scoping for organization of resources start with subscription, go down to resource group, and then go down to tags. And that will be how you will divvy up things like security, policies, auditing, cost controls, and so on. So I highly recommend that you learn about resource groups and tags, and then use these items to have conversations internally within your organization to determine what your tagging conventions should be and how you want to use your tagging conventions and resource groups to provide the best level of organization, auditing, security, and cost control. This will mean that you'll need to have conversations outside of IT. You'll need to talk to your finance department, talk to your security department. Hopefully this is beneficial. This is just the second in a number of different video series. I will be providing a couple more around governance pertaining to security and pertaining to auditing and how those things are going to be possible inside of Azure. So hopefully I will see you next time.